Are you envious of those amazing transformations that happen over short periods of time? You know the ones you see on social media every time you open one of your apps. And there's thousands upon thousands of amazing transformations. But what if the real amazing transformation was one that could be sustained over many, many years? Hello and welcome to another episode of Beast of Burden. My name's Paul Bassett. I run a fitness studio in Wandsworth, London, and we've been doing so for 10 years now. And we help hundreds and hundreds of people transform their lives, getting fitter, getting leaner, getting stronger. And they're typically extremely busy people. I like working with people a bit like me. When I used to work in another industry, I haven't always worked in fitness. I was busy, I didn't have much time. And now I've got 2 kids, I've got a mortgage, I run a business. I want to train people how I'd like to be trained, which is someone who listens to the situation I am in and gives me the solution to get me out of it. And if that sounds like you, then you're on the right channel. This podcast is aimed at people just like you who want to start making those changes, but are realistic about all the pressures that you're experiencing. So that brings me on to the subject today. How many transformations do you see day in, day out in the fitness industry, and particularly on the social media platforms like Instagram and TikTok, the ones that are particularly visual, where the transformations happen in rapid time and you see massive weight loss, amazing muscle growth, amazing muscle tone, people looking extremely happy, and it seems so rapid. And what it's done is it's changed our entire perception of what's possible in a short period of time. Now, those transformations are amazing, and we run rapid transformations as well. However, what if the real transformation was not what you could do in a short period of time, but is whether or not you can sustain that transformation for a long period of time? What if weight loss isn't measured by months, but it's measured by years? What if a plateau is the goal? What happens if sustaining where you are for many, many years without going backwards is more amazing than those dramatic transformations? Here's the thing, they're not as fun to look at, are they? When someone posts up on Facebook, hey, I'm stayed the same weight for the last 20 years. Or I still keep lifting heavier, but it's slow and incremental, but I'm 50. Does that sound as exciting? Does that sound as impressive as I lost 100 pounds in 6 weeks? You know, I know that's a bit of an exaggeration, but those things grab the headlines. So what I wanted to do today is talk about my journey and how I managed to sustain 16 years of progress. Because I'm now 46. I started my fitness journey really when I was 29, I think. You know, when I look back, it must have been 29. That was when it really became relevant to me. Of course, I'd been trying to stay fit for many years before that. And I'd been into sports and I'd been into fitness, but I'd also tried my best to be on the opposite end of that. Now, if any of you have been following this podcast for a while, you'll know that one of the old audio versions of the podcast, I go through my own personal journey where I got very unwell. I was very overweight, 120 kilos, and now I'm 86. And, where that led me on my journey to eventually become a personal trainer, having started in the music industry, which is not a healthy industry. It's not a healthy industry fiscally at the moment either, and it's not a healthy industry in terms of your well-being, but it's certainly an interesting story, and it was certainly interesting to me because I've gone on it. And where my superpower is since the age of 29, which is almost 17 years now, I've managed to maintain progress for 17 years. I've had pretty much ongoing growth for 17 years. And that, for me, is a massive win. If I can get a client to keep making progress for 17 years off the back of working with me, whether they work with me for 17 years or not, if they go on their own personal journey and keep making progress, what an amazing testimonial, what an amazing gift that I could give someone. And perhaps that's something you want as well. You like the idea of those big transformations that happen over a couple of weeks, but what happens if you sustain that over 20 years? Now, that's the reason I can speak from authority. And I've worked with clients who've been with the business from the start. Today, in fact, I was talking to two of our clients who've been with us 8 years, and they're stronger than they've ever been. They keep making progress. They're super consistent. And what a gift to have in their life is that they no longer have that question in the back of their mind, like, oh, I keep giving this up. I mean, I speak to people still on the phone on a weekly basis who haven't done anything since COVID. And COVID was 2020. And we're now in 2026. So it's almost 6 years ago now that the pandemic started. And it's been 6 years for many people where they've not done anything. And so a lot of people are consistent in the opposite direction, which is they're doing nothing for long periods of time. And I think one of the big challenges that people have is that they are very active when they're kids, and then they start work and their habits are completely disrupted from childhood, because you go from complete freedom and no structure to suddenly having a job. And that means that you've got to rebuild all these habits. But usually you sacrifice yourself in order to get ahead in the world. It's a very competitive world. A lot of us need to earn money. We all need to get ahead in career. And typical path, because no one really knows what they're doing when it comes to well-being. So all blind leading the blind. Hey, give up your fitness, give up your health. The job needs it more. The business needs it more. The kids need it more. And then you get 20 years later, you suddenly realize that you gave up your health for this, and you're starting to question whether that was worth it. So it doesn't have to be that way. I got to 29 and gave up my health. I ended up in hospital, very, very overweight, very, very unwell, just from the nature of my lifestyle choices, drinking too much, smoking, not doing any movement, having lots of joint injuries, a lot of stress. And, I had an awakening. I suddenly realized, well, I'm 29 and I'm like this. I've got to do something about it. So I started my health journey. And of course, now with all the knowledge that I have as a coach, having spent, since 2000, almost 10 years now running Hounds of Health, I've kind of learned a lot of skills, and I've learned a lot of ways of applying those skills in the real world that meant if I started my journey on today, at that 29-year-old, I'll be able to advise that 29-year-old very differently. But the one thing I've managed to do is never stop. And why did I never stop? Well, firstly, I had a really strong reason to do it in the first place. I got very ill and ended up with very severe stomach problems and very severe joint problems that were making my life really difficult to live with any kind of comfort. And I suddenly thought, well, if this happened to me when I'm 29, what is it going to be like when I'm 46? Am I going to live to 46? And it went downhill very quickly from being quite a fit teenager to suddenly being like, 8 years later in the state of disrepair where I was in hospital. And it was quite a awakening for me. When you collapse in a road and then you've got paramedics on you and everything like that, it makes you go, well, hang on a minute, something needs to change here. The problem I had is I didn't know what to do. I just knew I had to do something. So I started to try and solve the problem. And initially that was to start running and training for the London Marathon. And because that's what you do, isn't it? You go out and run because that's the thing that's free, it's easy to do, and you've got 2 legs. And actually I used to love running, but I had so many joint problems. And what I found is that I started to realize that I needed to do something. And that started to sustain me. But the biggest challenge I had was pain. And one of the reasons that most people stop is it hurts a lot to train. Physically, it's really, really painful for a lot of people because you've got so much joint problems, through lack of muscle mass, lack of movement for many years, tightness, soreness, dysfunction, poor diet, maybe injuries that just have never properly recovered. So I had all of that, but I had the good fortune of coming across a book, which I talk about in one of the previous podcasts, which is called Born to Run, which talks about a guy who went on his own journey into running because he had severe knee problems. He was very tall, and he started running ultra marathons following a particular system of running, barefoot running. So I got very much into running technique. And what happened there was I started to free myself from pain. I suddenly stopped hurting when I ran. And I'll tell you what, when things don't hurt, you're more inclined to do it. So what kept me going for 16 years? Well, firstly, I started seeing some changes. And I started I had a reason to do it, which was really strong, really strong. And that reason still exists now. I don't want to be that person again. I don't want to give up my health for someone else, okay? It's mine. I value it. I've built it. I've owned it. I've earned it. And it's mine now, okay? So the next part was I enjoyed that. I enjoyed doing some exercise. I found something I enjoyed, which was running. But the problem is that I started to come across my first obstacle. And this is where people fail. They think obstacles are reasons to stop. Obstacles are just things to navigate. We don't stop at a traffic light and get out of the car and push the car back to the house, do we? We wait for the traffic light to change and then we keep going. If we're in traffic, we find a different route. There is always a reason. If the destination is worth going, we'll find a way around it. And what I started to do was start to explore where I could solve this problem. Particularly, back in 2009, there wasn't much information that I knew about, and I hadn't come across a lot of the systems that I now just take for granted. But I read that book and it introduced me to my first system, my first kind of bit of self-development, which was, you're not the problem, but what you're doing is a problem. And you need to educate yourself and you need to explore or surround yourself with people who know what they're doing. So I started going to a running coach and I started to explore the running technique side of things. I got so into it because it became exciting. The whole idea of this self-development thing really excited me. I'd never really worked on self-development. I'd gone through education. Oh, you do this, and you get a qualification at the end, and maybe someone gives you a job. That's not self-development. Once you have a job, that's when self-development, starts. Running a business is an amazing engine for self-development, because if you don't develop yourself, the business stalls. And so I had that. The problem is then again, I came across another obstacle. I started getting more pain because I was doing the same exercise and I still had similar weaknesses and I still hadn't solved certain things and I had more pain. So I started trying to solve that pain problem again. Pain is a great educator. People see pain as a reason to stop. For me, I saw pain as a reason to find a solution. It was my body talking to me. There's a great phrase which is, listen to your body whisper before you had to hear it scream. And I was hearing it scream and I wanted to do something about it. And pain can educate you because it tells you not to do something again, do it differently. I just didn't know what to do differently. So I went on a journey to educate myself, and that's where I got into strength training. And I started to find people who knew what they were doing. And I think this is the sole reason I managed to keep going for 16 years, is I've surrounded myself with people who are better than me, who know what they're doing, who set standards, who solve my problems. So like most guys, I don't want to just talk about, this is how I feel. I want to actually work out what I need to do in order to solve it. So I need to go, right, okay, what do I do to solve this? It's the biggest thing. That's what I'm always searching for, is a solution to a problem. And I don't want to reinvent the wheel. I don't want to come up with a new version of a squat. I just want to be told how to squat properly and then be told how many reps and how many sets, and I'll do it. I'm pretty self-motivated. I am quite disciplined when I have focus on something and when I want to do it. And because I was feeling good, because I like this idea that maybe potentially I could be fit and strong, I really, really just got into that, and it starts to build momentum. One thing I've always, which I'm always aware of, is that the more I've educated myself, the more I wanted to teach it to other people. And the more I taught it to other people, the more I started to enjoy and understand the system that I was teaching. And through that education and play, I used to play a lot. A lot of people are really outcome driven when it comes to fitness. They have to lose a certain amount of weight in certain times. Despite the fact that it's taken them 6 years to get where they are, they want to see 3 weeks results. You can't totally be outcome based. Have a destination. Like for me, when I started getting fit, it's like I didn't want to be in pain. Then it was, I want to be good at running. What is good at running? Well, I wasn't good enough to be good at running because there was too many things in play that were stopping me being good. How do I solve those things? Strength world. I got really into strength. Let's play with this. I don't even know what strength is. Let's play with it. So I see it as a playground. And what I've done is self-development has been a playground. And I've been willing to reinvent myself constantly and over and over and over again, and give myself the patience to develop. It's not to say I'm always patient, but I'm more patient than other people. And I'm willing to just incrementally change things. I'm also willing to jump completely into something and fully give it my all. I can get bored quickly, and I can get angry and frustrated and impatient, but I've learned to temper that over time. But certainly what keeps me going is I do see the results. I notice when I'm not doing it properly. I notice when I'm not consistent, which is rare, but I do notice when I'm not consistent with my food. That if there's anything that I've struggled with more than my training is my food. But my training has informed my food. I'll be honest, without the training, it'd be much harder to maintain a good diet. So my body composition is generally pretty much the same in terms of like, I roughly sit around a similar body fat percentage, the same weight, give or take, unless it's Christmas and we're eating a lot of trifle, mince pies and everything else. But in general, my training has always driven my diet. Without the training there, my diet's not on point. I think it's really difficult to be in a calorie deficit when you're not doing any activity because you have to eat so much less. You know, one of the benefits of strength training and training hard is that I am hungry and I do enjoy my food, and it does give me some more calories to play with. Increasing my muscle mass has allowed me to eat more. And yeah, I mean, I'm at currently about 86 to 87 kilos, depending on the day. And, you know, I have gone down to about 70 kilos, which is far too light. Now it would almost be impossible for me to be at 70 kilos without losing muscle. So I put on more muscle. My body fat percentage is right. You know, I'm pretty happy with it. It's not 10%, but it's around at 12 to 14 on any given week. And I feel great with that. If I wanted to really knuckle down on body composition, I might. But what I have is a really nice balance that's sustainable. And that's what's kept me going for so long. Because it's very easy for me to do, I don't have to stress about it. I don't have to keep reinventing systems. I don't have to keep digging into willpower. I know that I'm going to be training on a Monday. I know I'm going to be training on a Wednesday. I know I'm going to be training on a Friday. I do my cardiovascular work in different ways. I do lots of walking. I'm cycling to work. I go for a run on a Sunday. I've taken up rollerblading, which I find, again, is a form of play. And I've really jumped into that because when I was a kid and I had so many joint problems, I mean, being on rollerblades was never even, you know, I didn't think I could do it. And now I'm 46 and I'm doing something I wish I could do when I was 13. You know, it's a great opportunity. I mean, I keep seeing opportunities for me to grow. I don't think, well, now I've done it, now I'm fit, I'm going to give it up. There's a great phrase by a coach called Dan John, which is, your program's going to work so well, you'll stop doing it. So most people, they go, all right, I've attained it now I'm fit. And then they stop doing it. I don't want you to do that. You just got to keep going and learn to love that plateau, which will inevitably happen. You will struggle to start adding weight onto lifts unless you're willing to put more time into technique or more time on that lift. And for most people who want to stay fit and healthy and lean, you don't need to train like a madman. You don't need to be an athlete. You don't need to be deadlifting 3 times body weight. You just need to be consistently showing up and finding 1 or 2 areas which you can improve. And if you have a self-development mindset, an ownership mindset, the one where you're willing to deconstruct yourself occasionally and rebuild yourself. When I took up the rollerblading, it was super frustrating because I was completely physically inept at it, having gone from being quite a competent personal trainer to suddenly being completely inept. And now I'm less inept, but it's like being a white belt again. And the difference is that with martial arts, everyone knows the hierarchy. There's a physical hierarchy. Because, you know, can't be a black belt within 3 weeks. No one will believe you. There is something very real about fighting that it's very difficult to pretend that you can fight because, you know, you can see it on the mat. And it's the same with strength training. It's like the weight won't move if you're not strong enough. You can give it all that, but if you can't lift it, you haven't done the work. And so I think you've got to have a personal development mindset. And that's what's kept me going for 16, almost 17 years. Having that personal development mindset, having a sense of playfulness, seeing this as play, having a system to follow, believing and seeking out amazing coaches who've expanded my mind. And rather than me pretending that I'm going to reinvent the wheel, I've just basically followed their system and discovered a lot about myself, because any system is going to be personalized to you. And, you know, and being around other people, I mean, it's great to be in this studio. I mean, obviously I run a fitness business, so it's kind of baked in, but there's a lot of very unfit business owners who own gyms. I come across all kinds of people who don't even train. I've come across business owners in the fitness world who don't even do any training. I ask them, what are you working on at the moment? And they're like, I don't do anything. And you're like, how can you run a fitness business and not do anything? It's a bit like being a dentist who doesn't clean their teeth. You don't have to be an Olympic powerlifter to own a fitness business. You probably have to have an interest in training yourself, or at least have an awareness on how to solve it, because it's going to be a problem. If you can't solve it, it's going to be difficult for you to solve it for someone else. But it's okay to go through it, because we all go through self-doubt, but at the end of it, you've got to have some kind of solution to it. So that's how you win long-term. You've got to have that mindset. And ultimately, I think that's more impressive than a six-pack in 12 weeks, which is great. It's great fun to do. And those are good and they're good practice along the way. I've had moments of acceleration and moments when I've stepped back. And you've got to have those ups and downs. Well, not ups and downs, but you've got to have those peaks and troughs and valleys and mountains and things like that. Those things keep things interesting. Have a period where you're pushing, you've got a real clarity in where you want to go, and other times where you just maintain, you dial back, you never turn it off. Fitness is like a volume dial. Sometimes it's very loud and sometimes it's very quiet, but it's not off. We've always got that ambient sound, rather than being like a light switch, which is on and off. So that's my journey. If you've got any questions about how that might pertain to you, just put them in the comments. Please do share this podcast, like and subscribe. The podcast has been going for almost 6 months now. And until recently, they were all audio. So you can listen to all the audio versions of this podcast on Spotify and iTunes and all those places. But now it's obviously available on YouTube where you can share this. We do have shorts as well. So if there's something within this podcast that you think might help someone, please do share it with them and subscribe. We've got a few subscribers, but we'd love a few more, like any channel. And yeah, we'll see you next week.